welcome to Legally Speaking with me, Tarun Nangia. Today, we're going to discuss an issue which can impact investments in India. And why do I say so? This is because whenever a promoter is investigated, that's one thing. But if you inundate a promoter with investigations by various agencies for the same offense, and he's required to produce documents to agency after agency, does he get time to run his own company, or will he just be a subject of investigations? So, for example, is the CBI, the SFIO, the ED, and of course, the income tax. If SFIO is investigating, should other agencies parallelly investigate? We have an eminent panel of lawyers who will explain us the complications of this issue. And also, if you block the all time of that the promoter has at his disposal to do this, then what would happen? May I introduce you my panel today evening? I have with me senior advocate Saurabh Kirpal, who joins me from Goa today. As we all know, senior advocate Kirpal is a well-known in the national capital, representing some of the top corporates in the Supreme Court of India and the Delhi High Court. Good to see you, Mr. Kirpal. I welcome Advocate Abhimanyu Bhandari, who joins me from the city of Delhi. We all know Mr. Bhandari. He practices at the Delhi High Court, Supreme Court, also takes up a lot of PMLA cases. In the recent past, we've seen him doing few in, of course, in Delhi, but also jurisdictions like Chhattisgarh and other jurisdictions in Bombay also. I have with me Neha Nagpal, advocate. She runs a law firm of her own, and Neha Nagpal has been instrumental in doing some of the biggest cases for corporate India involving big industrialists, also in the domain of SFIO, Enforcement Directorate, CBI, and many others. Good to see you, Neha, and looking forward to some interesting interventions from you at the outset. Abhimanyu Bhandari for the opening comment, and we'll wait for Mr. Saurabh Kirpal to come back.
Yes. Hi, Tarun. Thank you so much. I think this is a very important topic, Tarun. And the importance of this topic is because now what's happening is that there is a feeling, and sometimes there is a lingering thought in people's mind that multiple agencies are investigating the same transaction. Now, technically, one could argue that the ambit and the scope of each of these agencies is different. So, for example, let's take a very simple example. Someone who's taken a bank loan from a bank and that company has gone bust. So if the bank complains, then CBI starts investigating into the affairs of the company to see whether the loan was used for the purpose it was given, or was there a cheating where the loans were siphoned off. So CBI is looking at it from the perspective of a 420 offense under the IPC, which is cheating the bank. But what CBI is actually doing is checking where that money has gone, whether that money was actually taken for bona fide business purpose or it was misused. Now, if that same matter is then referred to SFIO, then the Serious Frauds Investigation Office starts also examining whether the company acted in a bona fide manner which took the loan, or was the company and the directors of the company and as people associated with the company also did the same thing, that is started siphoning off that loan to various entities. So there is definitely an overlap between the transactions which CBI is looking into and serious frauds is looking into. Third comes ED. Now, ED argues that, look, CBI is investigating the crime. I am not investigating the crime. I'm investigating what happened with the proceeds of that crime and what has happened to that. And that's where I am investigating. But now, Tarun, there is a serious problem here. The problem is that in every economic offense, there will be proceeds which will come from the economic offense, because without there being proceeds, there cannot be an economic offense. For example, if you go and cheat a bank for a bank loan, then of course those bank loans will be proceeds which you got from the crime. Let's take a very simple kind of an example. Let's say someone goes and robs a bank and opens a locker illegally and takes the gold bars away from it. Again, those gold bars are proceeds of crime. So CBI will of course investigate, or the police will of course investigate whether robbery happened or didn't happen. Will investigate whether the bank was cheated or not cheated. But what they are actually investigating is whether proceeds of crime was generated and you took money from the person who you've cheated. Now, ED says that mere possession of proceeds of crime is enough to there be a money laundering charge. If that is true, then every offense where there is a cheating will also be money laundering. Please take it this way. Let's assume that X goes and robs a bank and takes 2 gold bars from the bank and keeps it in his pocket or under his bed. He has committed robbery, and of course he should be punished for robbery. Robbery is a heinous crime, no doubt about it. But the question arises, should he also be investigated by ED because of those gold bars? Because he's in possession of proceeds of crime. So there is definitely, from that perspective, a complete overlap. Things become more difficult and I think more serious when companies are involved. Because if now you have CBI investigating whether the bank was cheated, and you have ED saying that the very fact that monies from the bank were taken. Now, without monies being taken from the bank, there is no cheating of the bank, right? So it would be attempt cheating. It would not be cheating. But if someone has cheated and committed an offense of cheating, then of course he's got monies from the bank as loan monies. Now, mere taking of those loan monies, ED will say, I'm also coming in. Now, if SFIO comes in this stage, I really don't understand that what role is left for CBI and ED then. I anyways don't understand that mere possession of proceeds of crime, ED should not also have a role. But now we've given ED also that role because now the judgment, now the law says that mere possession is money laundering. I still have my doubts about it, whether it really says that. But assume if it says that, then you've anyways brought in ED. So my question arises that now in such a situation, if SFIO also comes in, then there is a complete overlap. So you can't, you can call it a separate offense because CBI is investigating an IPC offense technically under the Indian Penal Code of cheating. ED is technically investigating a money laundering offense under Section 3 and 4 of the PMLA Act. And SFIO comes in and says, oh, it's a violation of the Companies Act because a fraud has been committed. So we are investigating the affairs of the company. But in essence, you are investigating the same thing that CBI is investigating. So there is definitely an overlap. Now things get more muddled because the Companies Act clearly states that in Section 2122 that when any case has been assigned to the SFIO, then only SFIO will investigate in respect of any offense under the Act and no other agency. So one could then argue, but look, this says under the Act. CBI is not investigating a Companies Act penal provision. But sorry, the question really is that there is a complete overlap because what the Companies Act makes an offense is fraud committed by a company. The fraud is nothing but a cheating offense which has been done with CBI is investigating. And if the person has merely got a bank loan and has kept the money with him, then ED also comes in. So anyways, there is an overlap now because if you are going to say possession of proceeds of crime is enough to make a charge of money laundering, then every economic
thanks for that introductory comment where you took us through all these points where you said that in effect the same offense could be investigated parallelly by different agencies, putting a promoter at sea in a sense because he doesn't know what hit him when many agencies dawn on him for the same crime. I'll go to senior advocate Saurabh Kirpal, and Mr. Kirpal, you get the opportunity to represent many of these industrialists. Could you give me a bird's eye view on what happens when you're swamped with all these agencies at your doorstep for essentially the same crime? And what would it do to the investment sentiment if this continues? You're not audible, sir.
Yes, thanks, Tarun. Well, it's obvious that when you're being hounded by any police authority, you are hardly going to have the wherewithal or the faculty to start concentrating on your business. Now imagine taking that one organization and multiplying it by 5. If you are being hounded by, and these things start small, first you'll get a notice from DRI. Next thing you know, the same information you have to give and collate and give to SFIO. Then SFIO, ED will ask for you. Now, all these documents, just the pure act of collating them and giving them from one to the other takes valuable time. The promoter will be then called, not just by one agency. He will have to stop functioning and working in his office and go to all these agencies, start answering their questions. The same questions, there's duplication and it's a waste of effort. No one is saying you should not investigate offenses when they happen, but this duplication casts a complete onerous burden on a person who's trying to do their business. As it is, when you're under the scanner of the ED or the SFIO, your business sometimes suffers because there is loss of market confidence. There are other problems that you will have in getting credit. The banks will declare you fraud. Now, a company is at a very precarious point at that point. So rather than being able to extricate it from that precarious position, you are now answering summons and questions of 5 different agencies on the same thing. So obviously, you can't do business properly, and companies will end up failing, and they will end up going to the insolvency procedure. And then you ask me about the investment sentiment. Look, when you want to attract investment into India, you must remember that there is competition all across the globe for the investment that is coming in. We always pride ourselves about how our ease of doing business is getting better and better. We're improving. But frankly, you don't need just investment from outside India. You need investment from within India as well. That is going to be your largest source of money. FDI is one thing, but if an Indian investor feels that they can't do business genuinely without having the fear of suddenly one day being roped in by not one agency, but 5, and trying to get bail not from one court, but 5, and trying to answer the questions of not one court, but 5. Now imagine this doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. You are systematically hounding out people who are investing in the future of this country. So some mechanism needs to be developed to stop this multiple harassment. One agency is bad enough. 5 become 5 times as bad.
Thank you for that opening comment. I'll go to Neha Nagpal. I remember we had this conversation, I think, over a month ago, when you said that a lot of promoters are worried, and you deal with some of the top ones, that why should be 5 agencies be investigating me for a single crime that is alleged on, and how am I supposed to concentrate on my work if all these agencies start to investigate parallelly? As somebody who represents many such businessmen, take us through the problem points one by one. Also share with us at what level the solution lies. Because I'll take you through comments made by eminent people in the government who say that the GDP is affected because the court process is slow. But if so many agencies investigate, then the court process will be slow because there are 5 cases that can't be solved in a single day. Can you take us through the motions?
Thank you for inviting me first, Tarun, to this panel. And I think it's a very eminent and a very important issue that's being discussed today. So firstly, what happens is, whether it's, company becomes NPA for whatever which reason, industry, sector reasons, or there is what you call, it becomes a SMA1 or SMA2, and banks sort of get active under the fraud circular. The minute they do that, there is a complaint written to CBI. Now, CBI gets active, as Abhimanyu rightly said, under Section 420 of the IBC, which is cheating. Now, if you see the definition of fraud under the Companies Act, it's so expansive that it actually takes within its ambit an offense of cheating. What is most important here is to also, pay heed to Section 212 of the Companies Act, which says that insofar as an affair of a company is being investigated by the Serious Fraud Investigating Office, no other investigating agency should investigate till that report is submitted. What it does say as a rider, that under this act, which is the Companies Act, but then there is an overlap by the very nature of the definition of fraud in terms of what the ED will come in and do and what the CBI is doing for cheating, etc. Because 447 and 448 of the Companies Act deals with exactly this diversion of funds and falsification of accounts. And the problem that happens is anyone comes in, and since 2018, there is an information sharing pact between all the agencies, be it DRI, SEBI, IT, ED, SFIO. So it's like it's a domino effect. And as soon as that domino effect comes in, the poor promoter is now sitting at a place where his calendar suddenly does not have meetings with VCs and banks. It's only got filled with this agency, that agency, that agency. And suppose there is a raid by ED first and they've taken all your data. SFIO will come in and say, you're not cooperating because you're not giving me the data, not realizing that I don't have the data. The same problem happens is when the company goes into insolvency and there's an ED investigation and an SFIO investigation pending, the poor promoter gets arrested and the agency comes there and says, oh, hang on, but he's not cooperating with investigation. How is the man supposed to cooperate when the company is now with the RP? Or the data has already been taken by another agency. So these are logistical issues that really come in, and they're genuine bona fide issues, which are beyond the control of anybody, like even as us as lawyers or the people under investigation. The other bit of the problem is that suppose one agency goes and files their complaint before the other. This has actually happened in one of my cases. SFIO has made 20 people an accused. ED has made only 2 people an accused from the company. So you're now with a situation where the nature of allegations is totally different. How do you defend? What do you defend? Because if you, through the course of trial, take a position in one case, you're going to impact the other. The third issue is then there are multiple LOCs. So you're not only running for multiple bails, you're running for multiple LOCs. And all of this in the face of Section 212 of the Companies Act, in the face of the information sharing mechanism, just seems, it's a complete harakiri, and we're dealing with a situation where there's not triple jeopardy.
Thanks for sharing all the intricacies, Neha, where you said about documents not being available if one agency has taken it and how the promoter faces problems. I'll now take this issue to Advocate Abhimanyu Bhandari. Mr. Bhandari, could you share with us these 2-3 points? A, do agencies ask for documents that are any which ways available with the government already? For example, agencies have the access to income tax. Agencies have the access to all your details. Is summoning of documents done even when the agencies have access to documents being a part or arm of the government? Could you share that thing with us? Secondly, is there any example you have given where these issues, where if a man is being investigated by various agencies, has this issue been taken before the court of law where accused businessmen have gone and said that, look, I'm being investigated by these 4 or 5 agencies. It is a practical problem for me now. Has that ever happened? You're not audible.
Sorry, Tarun, to your first question, whether the agencies ask for documents which may already be with the government. Yes, all the time. All the time I've seen summons issued to various parties under the FEMA, by CBI, by various investigating agencies, asking a person to disclose his income tax returns, and also documents which anyways may be with some wing of the government. So that happens all the time. What the problem here is that nowadays there is a trend where you're asked to give your bank statements for last 20 years. I mean, 20 years. This afternoon, I was a client was asking me, who got a notice from a particular investigating agency, asking him to disclose last 20 years of his bank account details and statements. Now, Tarun, I don't know who keeps 20 years of bank transaction details. And the thing is that even asking the bank to give you is a big problem, because banks themselves will not be able to give you something so quickly. So that's a huge impact, especially those who have foreign bank accounts. Foreign banks charge you a huge amount of money to give you such information, even if they have that.
In fact, the point you have raised should be taken up in another show, whether you can, how far back in time can you go to investigate? I mean, should there be a cap?
Yes.
Can I investigate you for something you allegedly committed in 1992? I mean, can agencies go that far back in history?
So this is, of course, a big problem. And, getting these documents, and as Neha rightly said, by the time all the agencies are behind you, there is a liquidator point in the company who is anyways in control of all the assets. So it is going to be next to impossible for the accused person. He'll have to run pillar to post to try and get those documents, to provide those documents.
I will now go to Saurabh Kirpal. You got in the documents. Mr. Kirpal, I want to understand from you that in terms of costs, does it get to be prohibitive when there are 5-6 agencies investigating you? I know you're an expensive lawyer, but I want you to delve into that area too. I'm asking you why, because when practically you're swamped with agencies, a lot of your money also gets blocked. Like Abhimanyu said that many times you're put into liquidation, so your access to capital is also blocked. Correct me if I'm wrong, Abhimanyu. When you're into liquidation, can you access your company's capital?
Of course not.
No, yeah. So can you share that with us, Mr. Kirpal?
That's absolutely correct. Because almost inevitably, when a company is in such dire straits, it would be facing insolvency proceedings. There would be a liquidator in place. And to get any kind of money out to pay, you would need approval of the committee of creditors. Now, I'm doing some matters for certain former promoters of a big company. And for them to pay even legal fees is very, very difficult because they have to go to the committee of creditors. Because ultimately, you see, not everyone who's accused is a person who's a fraudster. I think sometimes we need to bring the presumption of innocence back to our jurisprudence. Now, often a business person may have taken a decision which did not ultimately fructify, and maybe money was lost because sectoral reasons, as Neha said, there could be 100 reasons. Now, you could be an innocent person, but in the course of a business, if you lose money, it is not for you to spend your personal assets, personal money, to defend a business decision. But that is now what is expected of you, because you have no access to corporate funds. You don't have access to money because you're accused individually. The company is not charged, the individual is. In the meanwhile, you have to obviously pay expensive lawyers, not just like myself, but the other two esteemed panelists also on this. So it becomes, and you need a team at every court. First, you need a team in the Patiala House Court to get bail. You'll need a team in the High Court to get certain 482 petitions. You need a team in the Supreme Court. You need a vast legal team, because when the government comes after you, and we know in India process is a punishment, then it's not a cheap affair at all. And so now the promoter thinks that I have to start spending my personal money. Now, tell me one thing. Would this not have a deleterious impact on anyone seeking to make investment? Because they will say that I must keep a little nest egg away for myself. Because if I'm ever in trouble, then I will need this access to this money. And that then almost encourages, and it's like, almost willing for this to happen. So this is a most impractical system.
I'll take this to Neha Nagpal, what Mr. Saurabh Kirpal said. Neha, where does the solution lie in your view? Do you think the parliament will have to, in a sense, come up with a law which clearly states that you can't be investigated by 5 agencies simultaneously? There should be data sharing. If one agency asks you for documents, you don't need to submit it to every other agency. I don't know exactly, but do you think something has to be done? See, because in the end, the government many times says that the courts are slow. But if the government themselves are investigating so much, how will you, there'll be no solution. Everybody will be blaming each other. The government and the courts are slow. The courts will say there's so many cases. Where is the solution in your view?
See, I think Parliament in its wisdom has enacted Section 2122 of the Companies Act, which literally I think has been rendered infructuous because nobody is even reading it, or therefore it's not being implemented. Secondly, data sharing, the pact was already come about, I think in 2018 or 2019. So clearly the intent has been there to consolidate things. Is the consolidation happening at the ground level? Clearly not. So I think somebody needs to, and the government now needs to come in to sort of, balance the ease of doing business vis-a-vis also protecting banks. We can't be in a situation, definitely I agree with this, we can't be in a situation where people who've committed fraud on banks and public money and run away from the country. But at the same time, you can't curtail everybody, and as Saurabh rightly said, that not everybody is a fraudster, their basic rights. So I think it's time that the laws that exist and the various agreements between agencies that exist have to be enacted. And
point well taken. I'll go to Abhimanyu Bhandari for one final comment. Mr. Bhandari, could you have a decent understanding of the UK market, also the American market? Could you share with us that are systems similar in those countries? when we investigate businessmen for financial crimes with these 4 or 5 agencies, or are they different?
In the UK and in the US, Tarun, there is a big difference, because in the UK and the US, prosecutions don't happen so quickly. There is a detailed review done, and only if the department feels that it is necessary to prosecute this person, does the prosecution is launched. In our country, the whole process is different, where there is a prosecution launched by a mere FIR, and the whole criminal jurisprudence machine comes into play, and investigating agencies are unleashed upon you. There are independent prosecuting agencies which have to decide whether to prosecute or not to prosecute. So, for example, even if the police officer feels that someone needs to be prosecuted, there is a different department which will review the papers and see that there is material evidence and there is a material cause to prosecute the person. In our country, a preliminary inquiry, which is usually done by any investigating agency, is a very basic level of inquiry, which usually culminates into an FIR, and then the prosecution is launched in a way, because as Saurabh said, the process is the punishment. So one is subjected to investigation. There, in many cases, you will not be subject to investigation unless there is a really good case made out. And I'm sorry to say, but things like raids on people's houses are happened in very few cases, not as a norm that someone.
They don't happen. Thanks for this input, and I don't think we should put an end to this show. Let this be part 1. We would like to do one more part where we would like to delve into other aspects of investigation. One thing that we would like to take up in the next part of all you viewers is that whether arrest should happen only after agencies are convinced that there is no other way that we could access documents, or there is no other way that we could access information other than taking the liberty of the person. Or should arrest just happen after the FIR is filed? You just pick somebody up soon after you filed the FIR. That is a question that needs to be discussed at length, because it puts a certain fear in the investor's mind, that a single line FIR, or if you just put 120B criminal conspiracy, and suddenly a lot of people get arrested because everything under the sun comes under the ambit of criminal conspiracy. But that's for the next show. I would like to thank Senior Advocate Saurabh Kirpal, Advocate Abhimanyu Bhandari, and Neha Nagpal from NM Law Chambers for finding time and joining us on this very important topic concerning corporate India. Looking forward to see you in part 2. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.